It's me signing in again. Gonna do my third narration, right? And another one I'm doing. This is about, what I was saying before, conspiracy theorists versus mainstream media, right? And what I was saying this, right? Where the argument is, some people say they don't believe conspiracy theorists and stuff like that because they never have proof and they're just conspiracies. Well, on the basis that I go on, right? I'm the same, with conspiracy just as much as mainstream media. I'll never believe anything I hear unless it has decent sources to it, right? Or decent backup to it. Sources that say things, factual evidence, or things that contradict, like 9/11, which I'm gonna start off with this on where the main points about 9/11, which I've discovered. So even if you don't want to sit there and watch an hour long video about it, I'll put the main points about this which I remember. But yeah, we'll start off with mainstream media versus conspiracy theories. When it comes to that, I'll always look at things with decent sources to make sure these things are known. This is where it comes to conspiracy. I'll never be gullible. As I said, this is where the gullibleness of people, what they do in mainstream, I'll never do. That's why I don't follow them, because I'm not gullible as much as conspiracy theories. There's two sites, we know the secrets of the Fed, and another one. Like those sites, when I saw them as a conspiracy theorist, critical thinker, basically when I saw those sites, there was biased and, as mainstream papers and stuff. They didn't even have any backup to them. It was basically, this is this, This is what we're telling you, no backup to it. So, I stopped liking pages like that, because they were talking crap without any backup. So, So when it comes to that argument about conspiracy theorists versus stuff like that, I always look at things, always do research through Google and look at official sources and factual information before I even follow these conspiracy theories. And before I start too, and this is a good thing, a quote from Adolf Hitler himself, and everyone knows him, the Nazi regime in World War II. This is a quote he said himself, which we can tie along with the American public, let alone the world. With the mainstream media and the governments and stuff, how they can make you gullible. Basically, he said himself, knowing about this, what we'll just say is the quote he said is, "What good fortune for governments that the people do not think." And that's an Adolf Hitler quote. Do your research and that, right? And that says a lot. That when it says do not think, basically, when I talk about critical thinking, what it's saying that people do not critically think. They just listen and accept to what they say, because people are so gullible. And that's what it's saying along that theory, about that quote, basically the word critically think, but, it's a song along the same lines. Like I said, the example in real life, you always critically think, you always question things in personal situations, but you sit there and let strangers tell you what to think. So, when we'll start with 9/11, but first when I go into this is another thing about research and stuff like that, right? When it comes to research, when it comes to a lot of things, you would do research into things, let's say again, personal issues in life, where you critically think again, which the mainstream media don't do. You do research in things, for example, if your partner's cheating, you'll do research into that, right? You'll do research into that. You'll basically investigate, maybe asking around if they know anything about it, even looking for your partner's phone and that. You do research. So critically think now, this is a critical question. Why don't you do that when you hear stuff on the news? So Not only through this media deception on the previous recording, what I said, it's the same thing. They basically tell you what to think and you're gullible enough to believe it without researching, let alone you lose critical thinking, you don't do research. Well, as I said, example with personal issues in life, example, one thing like a relationship, you think your partner's cheating is something that's making you question that, question things, what they've been doing, acting, And you use that skill with that, and then you'll do research. As I said, you'll go and look around, as I said, ask questions, look at the phone, but you don't do that. The same with, so that's a good analogy of how example it. And we'll start off with the conspiracy theorist versus mainstream media, and what I previously said about, where it comes to what I've just said and what I mentioned at the start. And what I'll do is I'll do the brief points, so you don't even have to sit there and watch the 9/11 video, which I'll link again to make sure that if you hear this, I can get you to watch it if you're still closed-minded and ignorant to even consider it. But the main points I got from this, right, and these are very critical questions, and if you watch this video, you will see things that question that, and things that, versus the official story from the government. And all these lies that you were told, what you were gullible enough to believe, these things actually have backup and near enough proof to them to contradict the official story. So we'll start with the main points about 9/11. Like the 9/11 thing, right? This is what I learnt from it. First of all, right, we'll start off with the hijackers, the supposed hijackers that hijack these planes. And you can do your research. This is where I refer to research, so you can do it yourself. About 9, I think there was 9 of, or several of the 9, I can't remember, you'll see on the video, are those hijackers who apparently died in the towers, who apparently flew these planes into the towers not long after, and this is proof, and they're still alive, were found alive not long after they apparently died by going into the towers. For starters, critical thinking, how are they still alive if they apparently flew these planes and crashed into the towers? I mean, if you're stupid, you're not going to fit, but if you actually, it's not rocket science, you're going to start asking questions firstly about that. And then we'll move on to this passport which was found of one of the alleged hijackers, again, who was one of those people found alive, which was found in the debris of the 9/11, of the Twin Towers after they hit the ground, right? And this passport was found in perfect condition, as perfect as a book or something, or the passport you may have when you go on holiday. At the bottom of this debris, where these towers burnt down to debris, molten metal was burning, what we'll get into, but molten metal. And this thing wasn't even scorched. And then we'll move on, which you can look into again, where they said these black boxes on these airliners, which were destroyed by the fire. Now ask yourself, when you know through science, and this is scientific proof, how can a paper passport survive a fire that strong? And yet 2 black boxes, which we'll go into in a second, from planes, burn. Critical thinking. And if you actually do research, this is what I've learned years ago about black boxes on those planes. They basically record everything the plane has done, even if it doesn't crash, but after a crash specifically, like a forensics, it will record every single thing that plane did before it crashed, and these things were destroyed. And the thing about these black boxes is, these things can survive they can survive heavy impacts, explosions, anything, even real high temperature fires, probably, higher than the ones in the Twin Towers, and then referring, how did this passport survive? And yet these black boxes were burnt and destroyed by the fire. A paper passport found in perfect condition, found in their debris where with no chart, not even scorched. So, you've got to ask yourself that, because to me that doesn't make sense for starters, right? And then another bullet point from it. This is another thing from the video, and you can research all of this, everything I'm about to say, and you will find it traced, if you look at good sources. A week before the towers were, destroyed, allegedly attacked. The World Trade Center, and this is what witnesses said themselves, were closed down, right, for a week. Some weird thing, suspicious thing about, like security guards and, some kind of private firm that were going in with sniffer dogs and stuff for a whole week, and that, closing the towers. No normal staff in the World Trade Center were allowed in, just this private firm. And, if you look, they're connected to George Bush's brother, right? George Bush, who was in power at the time, his brother was in charge of this company. And that's already suspicious, when you ask yourself that. The connections and stuff. You hear at the skit what I put at the start, the audio that I'll put at the start, which will lead to this. And then we'll move on to, Larry Silverstein, this dude who owned the World Trade Center again. The World Trade Centers. 2 months or so before the WTC attacks, this man actually went to the insurance firm that were in charge of the insurance of the WTC, and this can be traced back as well. And this man suddenly made some kind of, add to the claim about that if the towers are attacked by terrorist attacks. Ask yourself firstly, that he gets some insurance for it suddenly 2 months coincidentally since these towers have been there. He suddenly came along and said, look, I want some kind of thing that covers if these towers are attacked by terrorist attacks. That isn't right for starters, because afterwards you'll find out I think he got 3 or 4.5 billion from those attacks, insurance. Coincidentally 2 months before, these towers are attacked by what they said were terrorists. How did he know? It's like he had a premonition, or did he know? Ask yourself that for starters. And this is another thing again, connecting to Larry Silverstein. Himself and his family, his son and daughter, and every day every single day, he went there for breakfast, himself and his son and daughter, I believe. For breakfast, right? And on this day as well, this is another critical thinking question. On this day, out of every single day he used to go, and never missed to go to the towers for breakfast, he apparently had some kind of doctor's appointment. And then it was cancelled, and apparently instead of going back to the towers for breakfast, he went for some kind of stroll around New York, which he never did it as his daily routine. He never did that. And funnily enough, his son and daughter weren't there that day either, They didn't dine there. These are the main brief points cut from an hour-long video. And then we'll move on to 9/11 witnesses, right? And you can see this on this video again, and these will be actual footage of witnesses from the tower attacks. And to do with these commercial-sized planes, which we'll go into in a bit more depth. A lot of witnesses were saying, and many witnesses were saying, these planes that hit the towers, when they saw them fly past, had enough chance to see them. They didn't see the markings of any markings to say they were commercial jets for starters, right? For starters, while they flew past, they had enough time to see him. Regardless, these are what they were saying when they saw that it was suspicious. And they saw they didn't have windows on the side. Now everyone knows commercial airliners, they have windows on the side of the planes, And obviously this is telling you something for starters, right? And there are actually US military drone planes. They're basically radio controlled, not manned planes, that actually look very, very similar to the model planes, the same, I think, Boeings or whatever, that hit the Twin Towers. And these things don't have windows on the side or specific markings. I think they did have markings, but they didn't look like the ones what the thing had. But regardless, the window's not on the side, which people never saw. And connecting to these military drone planes that don't have them either is telling you something for starters, right? And basically these drone planes, they're remote controlled, like the small drone planes that the American military are using to hit targets and stuff. They've been using those for a long time, And I remember this, which you can look up yourself and maybe on the video. Maybe when the Cuba conflict, I think it was around the 70s, this same scenario was used by the US government years before in the Cuba conflict, where they were using the same scenario about like a domestic attack where 2 planes are crash into buildings and stuff, and they may have been using a similar thing they used for 9/11. And before I move on to the rest of the witness thing, what's it called, the 7/7 conspiracy video, with the panorama thing, they did the same thing. So now it's the same thing how they planned as supposed drill, but actually happened exactly like it did before it happened. You know, these things connect. But we'll move on to the witnesses as well, more witnesses, and this is coming from fire service in New York, the fire department. And these are genuine dudes, you know what I mean? He worked, you found it suspicious, and you watching that video again, where it comes to do with the controlled demolition theory. And even, witnesses who weren't fire service, who were lucky to escape, but they said themselves why they were in the tower, in the lobby, at the bottom floor and stuff. What they heard were, boom after boom after boom coming down closer and closer while they were standing in there. As if, explosives were going off floor after floor after floor. And, connecting to this video, if you're going to watch after hearing these main points so far, demolition experts who were interviewed themselves, who actually are experts on this, actually said these, demolition experts were mention themselves. They were saying they're exactly the same sounds that you will hear on a controlled demolition. And these people are experts, And these dudes heard that, even citizens who were in the Twin Towers who were still there. Then we'll refer back to what I said about this private firm a week before 9/11, coincidentally, that came into the Twin Towers, and staff couldn't even be allowed in, not even normal security. Like, there couldn't be anyone who wasn't official. And, on that video as well, it said that, like the elevator shafts in the Twin Towers, stuff like that, it would have been easy for a week for someone to do if it was an inside job to plant, explosives in those places, in the weak points. And then you ask yourself, why wasn't anyone allowed in, and why suddenly do it coincidentally before 9/11, all this happened? So, you know what I mean? It sounds suspicious already, man, And these are from witnesses, who actually saw these things and saw them happen, heard them happen, why they were happening. These things aren't right for starters. This is what I remember, And then when, that's all you need to know on the main points. And and before we leave on to, thermite explosives, which were found, the thermite explosives which were found in the dust, like the rubble of the Twin Towers, by scientists who studied these thermite explosive, nanothermite explosive it's called. They found traces of it, and you can look that up as well. And this is where it gets deeper to make you ask yourself even more, even if you're ignorant, not even to think. But this nanothermite explosive, it only is accessible and belongs to the US government, US military. It is not accessible by anyone else but them. Now you ask yourself, critically think, these explosives, let alone it supposedly wasn't a controlled demolition, they apparently came down themselves. Why did they find nanothermite explosives which belong to the US government, US military? You know what I mean? In the first place, connect the dots, that's what it's about. And then I'll make sure to edit this in. But, referring to the chemtrail thing and another form of psychological deception and trickery, which I noticed, with kids' animated films and that, this is what I saw. For them to grow up to see it as normal, what they do is like subliminal science to make them believe. I saw from a clip of an animated and then I'll make sure to edit this in. But, referring to the chemtrail thing and another form of psychological deception and trickery, which I noticed, with kids' animated films and that, this is what I saw. For them to grow up to see it as normal, what they do is like subliminal science to make them believe. I saw from a clip of an animated cartoon for kids, where they showing these things known as chemtrails, which aren't normal in the sky in those cartoons. And, you know, as I said, it's like psychological deception and trickery, you know, which is implanted to their brain. When they see that in the sky, they'll still notice it when they're watching that cartoon, even if they focus on the characters. You know, it'll be in their brain, and they'll grow up, as a lot of generation do, and they'll grow up seeing these chemtrails in the sky, thinking that's normal, not knowing. And that's just one of the things used through cartoons themselves, you know. Apparently, you know, and if you research this, again, things to do, very sexual, what you would call it, sexually implied things, even in cartoons, Disney cartoons and that. And, you know, if you actually look at the cartoon clips and you realise what they were themselves, I think even recent cartoons like SpongeBob and things like that, which kids watch, you'll see there's clips that have been discovered which are sexually implied, like they're basically showing sexual motion, like porn and that. And to me, that's like subliminal teaching of pornography and shit like that to kids, you know, without them realising, because it's a cartoon. And as I said, if the people who took a while to notice that only noticed it long, it means, you know what I mean, they only noticed it because it was subliminal, because it was implanted in their mind without them realising. But you mean Disney cartoons and that, like Mickey Mouse, SpongeBob, things like that, you know, and kids are being taught things like that. And as I said, referring to the Illuminati and that, paedophiles, and even kill kids and shit, like sacrifice. You know what I mean? That ain't normal. The same powers that control those things. So people don't realise the depths, but I'll keep this as brief as possible. But yeah, you know, as I said, you know what I mean, if you do this chemtrail thing again, what you can do is on the conspiracy thing, you can even do comparisons of what normal sky should look like compared to what these, even if you're skeptical of what chemtrails look like, even if you think they're vapour from the jet engines, and you can even look into that to find out. You know what I mean, you can see what a normal sky looks like compared to this chemtrail, what it should look like. But you know what I mean. And yeah, you know, like the thing to do with the chemtrail planes is, you know, where they've got close-up photos of these chemtrail planes, you know, where they're saying it's from the jet engines, where you see on these pictures, where the jet fuel is coming out. Apparently jet fuel, what you can see from 30,000 feet down, so you can't even see what's coming from anyway until you get a close-up picture, you know what I mean, really close. They're not even coming out from the back of those jet engines, they're coming out from the wingtips. Now, if they're coming out, apparently they come from the jet engines, why aren't they coming from the back of the jet engines? Because these close-up photos are basically opposite of a satellite image from space looking down on Earth, but like a telescope camera being able to see them 30,000 feet up or even lower, so close that you can see and there's quite a few where these aerosols are coming from, and they're coming from the wingtips, because on these wingtips they have these aerosol, you know, like what dispense the aerosol, obviously not going to come for the engines in the first place, but that tells you a lot as well, you know, especially when you've got to critically think, why are they coming from the wingtips when all these official stories are telling me that these conspiracies are nutters, and you know what I mean, they're coming, but you know what I mean, because it means you've been lied to. So you know what I mean, sometimes you got to do research, and the research, everything I say, everything I've said on this recording, if you've had an open mind and listened to everything I've said so far, and you will discover more and more. This is what I've done, you know, I've gone down that rabbit hole since the 9/11 thing, and everything I've been talking about on those recordings is stuff I've discovered with decent things, through knowledge of people who have used factual or decent sources to them, as I said, not biased or like mainstream media telling you what to think without backup. All of it, you know, which I've discovered myself, and you can do the same. And you know, the more you go down, if you're not scared of these conspiracies that you find them so monstrous you can't believe they exist, like Jacob Hoot said himself, you know what I mean, sometimes, you know, the truth will set you free, and there's important things you want to know about regarding this thing about the New World Order and who's behind it and the type of people that are. And I think the recording I made was, you know, especially regarding the Illuminati religious aspects, you know what I mean, follows more into what kind of people they are, but there's also, as I said, what I mentioned at the start. But yeah, I hope you listen up and really see the you know what I mean, the more depths behind these things, you know. Alright.